Is that a vacuum I hear? It's a vacuum.
Late.
Man, can't thank Troy enough. He's working at all hours. Excited to get
Quinyon.
Quinyon Mitchell to Philadelphia. I think that for us, as the board kind of came off and a lot of offensive players came off, we felt like we were in a good position at 22, the way it felt for us and the players that were left on the board. We had a hard decision based on the guys that were left on the board, but we felt based on the player, based on the totality of the circumstances with the player, his talent, his character, and the position, we felt like it was the right pick for us.
At what point did you think it was realistic that he might get to 22? You wouldn't have to trade up?
I think once we got towards the middle of the round, we saw that we were going to be okay and get a first-round player at our pick. I think it was unusual to not have action in that room. I mean, we contemplated. There were some really good players still left. We contemplated going up, but we kept going back to the fact that we felt like we had a really good chance to get a first-round player at a position of need where we were picking.
We felt that there would be a lot of offense in this first round, but the way it went, was that a little surprising to you?
I don't know that it was necessarily surprising because we go through so many scenarios. So we had gone through scenarios where 4 quarterbacks went, 5 quarterbacks went, 6 quarterbacks went, which really affected us a lot. You know, and like I said, we go through the worst case scenario first, and then we work back from there. So I think from our perspective, maybe a little surprising how late it took for the first defensive player to go. Probably didn't expect that.
Howie, why this cornerback, the first cornerback you ever drafted in the first round, and why do you think you're going to get this one right?
Well, I couldn't have got any wrong in the first round if I didn't draft them, to be fair, Jeff, right? So, yeah, that's fair. You know, certainly, you know, there's overconfidence in the draft for sure. You know, 4 out of every 10 first-round picks don't make it. I understand, you know, our success rate at the bottom half of the first round hasn't been as good as earlier in the first round. And so, you know, we just rely on our process. We rely on who the particular player is. In this case, we think we have an extremely talented, hardworking, outside corner. So he's got all the tools in his body, the right mentality. We felt like we had really good information. Coach did an unbelievable job because of his connections at Toledo, really kind of relaying those thoughts and, you know, us having the same conversations with the coaches. He really had a great process. And when you think about kind of he had a chance to transfer out of Toledo last year. He stayed there. He came back. He got better. He went to the Senior Bowl. He really checked the whole offseason process boxes one by one off, which is important, you know. And obviously, he's got a lot to prove as a small school player. The MAC is not the National Football League. We understand that. You know, we've had tremendous success with big schools. So, you know, to take a player like this from the MAC, he has to be special, and we think this is a special person.
How valuable were those connections in the building for you, and what kind of things did you learn about?
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, you get the information on guys. You know, Howie and his staff do. You know, they have all these connections everywhere. They get the great information on guys. You know, just was able to get, you know, some of the information there. Obviously, with my ties there. You know, and really, I guess at the end of the day, with how good of a player he was, the thing that always kept coming up is how good of a person, how good of a teammate, how hard of a worker, how competitive, and those are things you want to hear.
Howie, what was it that kind of made you, I know you don't draft necessarily for need, but felt the need to take a cornerback in the first round?
Well, I think you hit it. We didn't feel like we had to take a corner in the first round, but it was the highest ranked player on our board at a position that, you know, we'd like to kind of get some younger players here. We got some younger players last year. We like those younger players. We wanted to add some competition at the corner position. And so we felt like based on those factors, but I think the most important thing was that we didn't jump the board. You know, this guy was standing out on our board. He was the highest ranked guy. And, you know, it seemed like a pretty easy pick, though. Again, you know, the only reason that it was a hard pick was because there were still a bunch of good players there that we liked that we would have been happy to select.
Howie,
As a follow-up to that, you had a choice, like you referenced. What set him apart from Arnold one pick later?
Yeah, I think that those are hard decisions. You know, I think when you get into you know, specific players that you have very similar grades, you know, there's no insurance on those things. And so I think for us, maybe we just felt like for our situation, what we were looking for, that you know, this was the right player for us. But again, like you're talking about another really good player there, and again, these are close decisions.
Howie, off the draft for a second, AJ's extension, what made you want to get it done so early and be so proactive?
Yeah, that's the word. You know, we try to be proactive to try to keep this team together. You know, that starts with Jeffrey and his support, like we talked about in our pre-draft press conference, and just talking about the benefits of trying to keep it together as much as we possibly can. And the only way we could possibly do that is by doing deals early. And, you know, we felt like it was an opportunity to do that here. With AJ, obviously we've done a bunch of deals with a bunch of our players, and we want to add to that, and we want to try to keep this team together as much as we possibly can. We couldn't do that without his support in allowing us to do that, and we felt like the earlier we did that would be better for us and him, you know, and him knowing that he was going to be here, and you know, he's a great player and captain of this team. I think I saw someone show me a stat when we were doing some research on this. I think he's number 2 in receiving yards in the first 5 years of his career in NFL history. I mean, what's that? He's number 9? He's not number 2 in the first 5 years?
No, he's behind like Moss, Rice. It's pretty good company, but he's 9. I just looked it up.
All right, Rube, stop talking. Let me roll. The nine's good. Not as good as 2. Anyway, he's had a phenomenal start to his career. He's still young, and be able to keep that core group of offensive players, and you know, hopefully, kind of continue to add to it.
Back to Mitchell, he played a lot of off coverage in college, but a lot of the NFL plays that way a little bit without the zones and the Fangio zones. The scheme play factor into this, and
Hey, Vic, did you hear? You have your own zone. Everyone's looking for.
well, he does a lot of the, you know, those.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, I mean, he played a tremendous amount of off coverage at Toledo, and I think when we talk about finishing the process, you got to see him play press coverage at the Senior Bowl. That was really an opportunity to see him kind of finish that and be well-rounded, and so I think that really helped us see that he had a diverse array of skill sets there, because that was one of the concerns when you see him play, that he's only playing a certain way and he's allowing his eyes to lead him to the ball. And so when he got in people's face at the Senior Bowl, we thought he was one of the best players at the Senior Bowl against really good competition, against really good receiving class. You know, we see a bunch of them come off today, and we'll see a bunch of those guys come off tomorrow. So I think that was important for us.
With taking Mitchell, what's the future like for Darius Slay and James Bradbury? And also, you have a lot of cornerbacks now. Is there any thoughts potentially moving some of them to safety?
Yeah, I think that, you know, obviously we've talked about both those guys, you know, Slay coming off a Pro Bowl year, and James working to get back to how he was 2 years ago. And I think when you talk about corners, O-line and D-line, you can never have enough of those guys. I mean, it's just throughout the course of the season, having guys who can cover people so important. And obviously we've been in a position over the past few years where we haven't had enough of those guys, you know, and whether that's through injury or just kind of, you know, not running out of guys towards the end of the season. So I don't think I think that's a good problem to have. I think that's what competition, you know, that it shows its way through. We got a lot of practices, a long time to go before we go to Brazil. So I think it's our goal right now just to add as much competition as we can to this football team and let it all shake out.
Howie, how big is it to still have 50 and 53 and still get the player that you wanted?
Yeah, it's really big, you know, and I think that I think you go kind of through this draft, and you know, my mind isn't really on what we just did. It's kind of on what we're doing next, so I'm a little distracted because it's hard to kind of sit here and just talk about in a vacuum one thing. We got a lot of work to do tomorrow and Saturday, and so we're going to try to execute the best we can, and it's a quick turnaround. So, for us to have a successful weekend, we got a lot of work to do. You were going.
Now, hard the decision was, and that Quinyon ended up being the top player on
Yeah.
the board. With all the scenarios in front of you, what was the possibility that maybe you didn't get the number one guy left on the board at that time? And how hard is that decision whenever we talked before how you like the trades?
I'm confused. So what was the question?
You mentioned how
Yeah.
Quinyon was the highest player left on your board.
Right.
With what's ahead of you, how hard is that decision when you may not have him there if he gets picked before you?
You're saying to wait for him? Is that what you're saying? Was it hard to wait and make sure you got him? Is that what you're asking? Yeah. Well, it's not normally in my nature to do that, so I understand that. I think that the only reason that we felt comfortable was because the scenarios played out in a way that we were comfortable we were going to get a really good player at that pick, just based on how the board was going. The way we do it is, if we're at pick 15, we got to have as many players that we like. When they start to fall off and we get in a spot where we don't have as many players as our pick, we start looking to move up. So if we're at 15 and we only have 3 players left that have first round grades, it's a concern, so you try to move up. When you're there, and Rube, why don't you do the math for me? How many players do we have to go before 15? 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Eighth player, we get the 8th player, right? We get the 8th player. So when we're there and we see we have 8 players, and then 16 at 7, and so on, then we know we have a preference on that. But if they're all having the same grades, then we feel good sitting. So I think for us, it's like as long as we're in the same tier of grade in that round, so we're sitting there and we still have a first round grade on 7 guys or 8 guys at that point, we feel comfortable sitting. If we get to a low number, then we try to move up. If we get over that number, we move back. And I think those are the other options there is, do you move back at that spot, and pass on a guy that you feel really good at, but maybe you get good value. And I think those are some of the discussions that we have. I think that based on the experience that I've had is that sometimes you try to get too cute, and we can't afford to get too cute. We're trying to build, the best possible team. I really did not. I was trying to answer your question.
You mentioned the Senior Bowl and how Quinyon showed some versatility in different spots. Do you think he has inside-out versatility, or do you view him more as just an outside corner?
Well, I think that for us, the most important thing is he focuses on one thing as a rookie. I think that's obviously coach and his staff's choice. But I think when we talk about him as an outside corner, and kind of working from there. You do watch him and you see him play some inside, so he's got that versatility. I think we'll get him in here. We'll see what he's comfortable doing with our coaches and kind of working from there. Well, you go, Nick, and then
Go ahead, no.
Go ahead, Zach.
Yeah,
I'll
spoken about the lack of first-round corners here, but you've been around some, Rockets and Super. What's your sense of the adjustment, the learning curve for rookie corners drafted that high?
Yeah, obviously for any position, there's an adjustment to be made from college football to NFL football. I think I don't necessarily say it's more than the other positions. I know you mentioned a couple guys that when I think about those 2 guys, they played really good football their first year, and so we're just really excited about the player. We're excited about the person. Couldn't be more excited to have him on our football team.
Bob, and then Don?
A year ago, you got Jalen, and a lot of people thought you might have got the best player in the draft at number 9. Do you feel like you've got that much of a improvement over the actual pick talent-wise? I mean, I guess the question is he a lot higher on your board than 22?
Yeah, I think once you draft them, it's what they do in the NFL, and so I think once we bring him in here, we talked about it a lot. We got to develop the player. We got to develop the person. We're still talking about a young guy coming to Philadelphia, and I think that's at this point, it's all what he does from here. So whatever happened pre-draft, none of that matters. Wherever they're picked, none of that matters. It's what they do from now on. So I think obviously we wouldn't have picked him. Someone said in our draft room during this week, by definition, you're the high bidder on any player that you pick. So obviously, we were the high bidder on this guy, and I thought that was a unique depressing way to look at it, but, so anytime you think you're getting someone really high, well, you're really the high bidder. So, I think that, obviously, for us, as we went through outcomes, that we felt like this would have been a good outcome for us as we went through the draft. And, history is yet to be written.